Karen Bonifilio, Inner Realms, Outer Journeys. I have another fabulous guest today, and I want to thank you all for joining in. Today we have Mark Ireland. Mark, would you like to say hi before I talk about you?
Sure. Hello, and thanks for having me today.
Oh, I'm really excited. So before I tell you about Mark, he had asked me, how did you find out about me? And it sounds really trite, but it's true. I let spirit lead me to people. And then he led me to Mark. And then when I read Mark's bio, it's incredible. So you are in for a treat. So let me tell you a little bit about Mark, and then I'm going to let him do a lot of talking. Mark Ireland, he is the author of Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go, and the Persistence of the Soul. Mark, do you have a third book also?
Well, it's actually a book that was written by my father, but it was never published. I found out about it later, and then I was able to get it published. It's called Your Psychic Potential, A Guide to Psychic Development. And there's this whole story about how I got that book, which I'll talk about later.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, so these books chronicle his personal search for answers about life after death following the passing of his youngest son. And that's a really hard loss. I think losing a child is such a hard loss.
Absolutely.
It is. I've had hard losses of death in my family, but I always think, and then I told, when it was all going down, I told God, you take my kids, and then that's it. I'm out of here. I can't take that. So I think children is the hardest loss I do. So I'm not going to go down that road. He is the son of a renowned mid-20th century psychic healer, Richard Ireland, and the co-founder of Helping Parents Heal, an international organization supporting more than 31,000 grieving parents. In addition to his writing and advocacy work, Mark has participated in mediumship research studies conducted by the University of Arizona and the University of Virginia, contributing to ongoing exploration into consciousness and survival beyond physical death. And Mark, there's always a question that I ask my guests when they're on here, and because I'm happy that people share their knowledge. And then I always want to ask them, what's their best way to serve? And I'm going to tell you, your life is a testament to a life of service, what you've done with your life. So I'm not going to ask you that question today. And he's in a band, so he's very well-rounded. So Mark, tell us about yourself. You've got a lot going on.
Well, I grew up with this father who was very unusual. This is back, in the time frame before mediumship and things like that were really viewed openly, like more like they are today. Not that we're all the way there yet, but it's a difference. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, my dad was doing a lot of psychic demonstrations, but he also had mediumship skills. It was just in public venues, you wouldn't necessarily talk about that. It was more the psychic angle. And back in the 60s and 70s, especially, you had a lot of people that were, called themselves mentalists, but he never did that. He said, I am a psychic.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a very brave thing to do in that time frame, but his gifts were outstanding. Just the amount of detailed information he could pull through and give to people. And, but he also had a church. He had a very progressive church for the day. Even by today's standards, it would be progressive, where he would demonstrate more the mediumship part of it and try and correlate, scripture along with these gifts of the spirit. So I grew up with this stuff. I guess that was what I was getting to, although I never really tried to follow my father's footsteps per se. He always said, my son Mark is very psychic, but I'm like, Dad, what are you talking about? I can't do what you do. And we're just different personalities too. I was more cautious and careful and conformist, I guess, and he was more, on the fringes and very, willing to experiment and look at different things. But I guess my life circled back to what I learned in my childhood, or what I observed when my youngest son passed. Prior to that, I'd pretty much gone the mainstream path of getting a degree. I got married young. We had 2 boys, and I was just focused on my career and advancing that. So,
And what type of work were you in? It had nothing to do with what your father did?
no, I was in management, sales management for companies that were in the print world and advertising world, directing sales teams and things like that. And so it just, when my son Brandon passed unexpectedly, it was a catalyst really to pull me back into my dad's field, and me to really reassess what I was doing in life and what was most important. Not that I couldn't keep working, in the field that I was in, but that, there's a lot more life than just your job or your career. And, that journey really helped me and my family, but also a lot of friends. And then eventually, with all the experiences I had and sharing those through my books and through talks and things like that, I know it's extended out to help other people heal. And then eventually the founding of the Helping Parents Heal organization as well,
which is
huge. 31,000 members worldwide. We have over 170 affiliate locations. And we have a conference every other year that draws 1,100 people to a single location. And that's a very healing event.
I want to back up a little bit. I want to talk about the death of your son. I noticed that when I lost my 3 family members, what death was like and how it guts you and eviscerates you. But I also noticed for myself and with other people that I work with, they come out of that as a new person. And it sounded like you did too, because all of a sudden the trajectory of your life changed. You kind of find out you're a new and improved person, and you find out really what's most important in life too, and where to focus.
Yeah, I think in my case, that's exactly right. It's not like I didn't still have a spiritual set of beliefs or knowledge that guided my ethical behavior and things like that, but I just didn't pay as much attention to that. And I think the way things unfolded, I could tell it was like all kind of part of a plan, because there were just so many synchronicities that happened that by chance, there's no way it would have just been a coincidence. These things were lined up, and just so many unbelievable things happened, and experiences and things like that really helped. It was like a breadcrumb trail that I had to follow, really. And it all just kind of unfolded in a very natural way.
But then you know that you're on the correct journey when you're traveling and those doors opened up and you get those breadcrumbs. So you knew that it was supposed to be that way.
Right. So like one of the first things that happened that kind of helped me and my family was after Brandon passed, and he had been on the mountains in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we lived at the time, and ended up dying of a severe asthma attack. But we didn't know the cause of death for a week. We just knew that he had gotten dizzy and felt funny, and he was with his best buddies, and they couldn't revive him.
Oh, gosh.
But it was after he passed, I talked to my uncle. Now, by this time, my dad had passed, but my uncle was still around, and he had similar abilities. And he asked if he could do anything for me. And I said, well, if you can get any kind of message, I'd really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And 3 days later, I was in the mortuary, and we connected by cell phone. And he said, hey, Mark, I just wanted to let you know that I tried to connect last night, but I couldn't get anything. However, this morning, I was doing my morning meditation, and your dad came to me, and he wanted, and keep in mind, again, we didn't know the cause of death at this time.
Okay.
My uncle said, your dad came to me. He wanted you to know that he was there for Brandon when Brandon transitioned. Good. At first, Brandon was a little confused, but your dad helped him adjust. And Brandon wanted you to know you're the best parents he ever could have had. which is the nice thing we want to hear. But then on the heels of that, he said, your dad said Brandon's death was caused by a lack of oxygen in his bloodstream that caused his heart to fail. 2 days later, then I talked to the physician who had done the autopsy, and she said, yeah, your son had a severe asthma attack that drove his blood oxygen level down and caused cardiac arrest. So I really got the cause of death from my uncle 2 days prior to the autopsy.
Prior to that, yeah.
Another thing that I did, I wanted a direct form of connection. So I was within the first few days, I went into a darkened walk-in closet, sat down, shut my eyes, and just tried to get into a meditative state, which isn't always easy for me. But in this case, I was able to get there, and my screen kind of went blank. And then I saw my son's face like scrolling across my mind's eye, and he was glowing. I felt joy. It was like he was all lit up. But then right after that, I saw a cross with an oval loop at the top. And I thought, I had seen people wear those. I didn't really know what it meant. Mm-hmm. So then I had to go Google it, cross with oval loop, and found out it's the Egyptian Ankh, the oldest cross of human history. I think it's about 5,000 years old. The lower portion representing physical life and the oval loop representing eternal life. So what I got, I felt was a coded message for something I didn't already know that I had to look up, which made it more meaningful to me. So those were a couple of the first things. And then 3 weeks after the passing, I was watching the local news in Phoenix on the NBC affiliate, and they were showing this feature about a mediumship research study being done at the University of Arizona at the time. And they showed the medium, who was Allison Dubois, before she got famous, because the show Medium had yet to come out. So she was there reading for people she couldn't see. They were separated from her, and they weren't allowed to really talk. It was more of a one-way where she just had to hear validations. And then at the end, they debriefed, and the people, I was really impressed, because I thought, wow, she's provided a lot of very specific information. And in the debriefing, the folks pretty much confirmed everything that she said. So I thought to myself, wow, I'd love to get a reading from her, and I'd love to get in that lab someday. Both things would subsequently happen. Now, the very next day, I got a call from a man named Jerry Conser, who was friends with my father. And he says, hey, Mark, I know what you've been through. I know someone who might be able to help you. Her name's Allison Dubois, and here's a phone number you can call to get an appointment. So,
wow.
One of those first synchronistic things.
So cool. Yeah.
So I did make the appointment, but even then she was booked out till August, and this was February. So,
oh gosh. Yeah.
But, like I said, the breadcrumbs just kept coming, and I kept following them. And those were some of the early ones.
Did you ever have a reading with her?
I did. It was in August that year. So
was that incredible?
Oh, it was. She was extremely good. One of the ironic things was, I think I mentioned to you before we started that I had a book published that my father had put together that I didn't even know about at the time. So 2 weeks before my meeting with Allison, this gentleman gave me a box, and inside the box was an entire manuscript typewritten that said, Your Psychic Potential, A Guide to Psychic Development by Richard Ireland, dated 1973.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, where'd you get this? And he goes, well, your dad gave it to me for safekeeping before he died. I said, well, why did he give it to you? He goes, well, you were out of state at the time. And I said, well, it's been 12 years. Why are you giving this to me? Why are you
waiting?
And he said, I don't know. I just feel like I'm supposed to. 2 weeks later, I meet with Allison. One of the first things she says to me is, well, I've got your father here, and he's shown me a book, but I believe it's his book, and he's handing it to you to take forward. Does that make sense to you? I'm like, yeah, I think I understand what that's about. And so I did take the book forward, and was able to get it published in 2011. So that was pretty cool. But she had a lot of other validations that were on the money. I went in there with her knowing really nothing about me personally. She did. I'm trying to see here. She said, your son is here, and he congratulates you on your 25th anniversary. Well, we had just had our 25th anniversary 6 weeks prior. So that was pretty cool. She had that she felt like the cause of death was like a drowning, which is ironic because the autopsy physician told me that our son's asthma attack was so severe it caused his lungs to almost touch in the middle, and that only happens in cases of severe asthma and drownings. So that descriptor was right on the money. She also got my wife's name and my sister-in-law's name and some other things, but it was a really good reading. In fact, I went back through that not too long ago, and it just reminded me of the quality of it. But I've had many high quality readings too, and met a lot of people through the course of this, both mediums and researchers. So it's been an interesting journey, and it's not over yet.
No, not until you draw your last breath will this be over. Well, tell us about the studies that you experienced, the University of Arizona and Virginia too.
Yeah, the one in the University of Arizona happened first, and it was actually recorded for a Discovery Channel feature. So if people go to my website and go to the media tab, you can find a link to that. It's a couple minutes long. But basically, I have a whole chapter in this book that talks about that particular experiment, which was really interesting. So I was placed into the lab, separated from a medium named Lori Campbell, who's excellent. And then she was asked a series of questions by the researcher, and this is all, recorded for that Discovery Channel feature and episode. But she got a lot of really interesting validations for, I recall her saying, like, the researcher would ask about, didn't say who, just said the name Brandon, didn't say who Brandon was or the relationship to me, but just said, how did Brandon die? How did he pass? And Lori said, my chest, I feel all this weight, and I feel like I want to throw up. And he did actually vomit just before he passed out. And then she says, I feel like there's a tree planted with a plaque. Well, his high school did plant a tree in his honor, and there was a sculpted metal bass guitar, because he played bass guitar. And that was placed with the tree, and there's a plaque on there in his honor. So, and there was a number of other things. She said, she was asked, what can Brandon share that would indicate that he's connected to the sitter? And at this time, again, she didn't see me or know who I was at all. And she said, well, I feel like there's a book being written, and it's about him, about Brandon. And that was Soul Shift. Yeah, I was in the process of writing it and was pretty far along at the time. But that particular chapter was like icing on the cake for the book. So, and then the one with the University of Virginia, I can't remember who connected me, but I ended up being connected to Dr. Emily Williams Kelly, who's now since retired. But at the time, she was doing a study on mediums, and her research project involved basically sending me 6 different readings that had been done, and I had to pick which one was the correct one for me. So it was those were like controls basically, but there were 6 different sitters, and each of us were given an array of these, but only one of them was for us. So that was interesting. I never saw the exact results, but afterwards she wrote to me and said that the results were embarrassingly good, whatever that means. So, and subsequently, I've actually, about 11 years ago, I started my own certified medium website, and it's basically a certification process. The reason I did that is because after the first book, Soul Shift, came out, I was flooded with requests from people wanting to know who they should go see, who's a good medium. And at the time, I knew Allison and a few others, but they were, some of them had real long wait lists. And celebrity mediums tend to charge more. So I thought, there have to be other people with this ability that are lesser known. And so I started it, and I kind of put the word out, and then I developed a process from the protocols were really developed partially from my interaction with Dr. Emily Williams Kelly, but also Tricia Robertson of the Scottish Society of Psychical Research, who's a friend of mine. So I put these together, and initially I would do 5 readings that are blinded to the medium. So it would be on Zoom with no video on, and the sitter, they were given a sitter's first name only, and then they just had to do a reading, live there. And the sitter was limited in the responses they could provide. So there's no chance for cold reading.
Wow.
They could perhaps read auditory cues. So but that would be about it. And that's why we'd limit what the sitter could respond with. You know, they could say, yes, that makes sense to me, or
So
no, that doesn't.
they don't see the sitter at all.
No.
And they're
And
not
then
getting any verification as that sitter's as they're
they
talking
could
to the sitter.
they could say, yes, that makes sense to me, or no, that doesn't make sense, but that's about the extent of it.
Okay.
So, and I've refined that over the years. Now I do 4 because we're so backlogged that we couldn't keep up, and they have to pass the first reading to be able to continue, but it's the average of the 4. And I've got, the way I grade it now is a third on accuracy. And by accuracy, I'm saying, you know, is the statement correct, incorrect, or am I unsure? Like it's indeterminate. So an indeterminate statement might be like a future prediction that has yet to pass, or like a piece of information that they don't know the answer to, but somebody else might, but they don't have the ability to contact that other person.
Got it.
But otherwise it's correct and incorrect. And then a third of it's on evidence. So just as an example, you could say, okay, your grandmother liked to bake pies. Okay, well, that's correct, let's say. But that's probably correct for 90% of the population too. But if you say your grandmother liked to bake apple rhubarb pies on your birthday, and that was correct, that would be evidential. So that's a higher. So we grade in those highly evidential statements. And then the third component is just a subjective grading by the sitter. Like, was it a stupendous reading? Okay, poor, you know, so they grade that. So anyhow, over the course of 11 years, I've certified over 50 people and turned away a lot more than I've certified.
Oh, wow.
But it is a process that.
Just 50 people in 11 years.
Yeah.
But that's good. Those are high standards.
Yeah, they are, you know, and they've become more stringent as time has gone on too. I've raised the bar multiple times. So, you know, because really the reason I put it out there is it's to help grieving people. So I have to give them the best possible chance for a good session. It's never guaranteed, but the odds are improved if you have somebody who you know has the ability. Because there are a lot of folks out there who have a little bit of it, and there's some folks that are a little deluded too, and they think that they have more than they do. So this kind of separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
You know, and I have seen other mediums discuss that on Facebook. Just because you took a class doesn't make you an evidential mediumship or a medium. And so I know that the people that go through that process, that's key to them. And they're talking about them.
Yeah, I've even actually more recently, I've gone through a workshop myself with Tony Stockwell and Lynn Probert, who are from the UK, and kind of surprised myself. But then again, it does run in family line. So I think I have some ability myself, although I don't have any aspiration to be a practicing medium or anything like that. But I'll give you an example. It's kind of funny. A couple of weeks ago, there's a really high caliber medium named Farrah Gibson in Phoenix, who's a friend of mine. And I said, hey, could I do a practice reading for you? She goes, oh, I'd love that. I've never had a reading. All I do is give readings. So anyhow, it ended up being really good. And I gave her a lot of validations, but the one that really was over the top, and it was 2 days before I was pulling my car in the driveway. And I thought, oh, I got to do this test reading for Farrah soon. I hope I get something. And as soon as I thought that, something popped into my mind, and it came very subtly, but it was a pie. And then immediately I knew it was a cherry pie. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I wrote that down so I wouldn't forget. And I wrote down some other things. And so we get on Zoom, and the very first thing I said to her was, okay, I'm going to tell you what I got the other day, a pie, and specifically a cherry pie. And she goes, oh, you got to be kidding me. And I'm like, well, what? She said, well, I decided to throw you a curveball. So before doing this, I put out a thought request to a stepmom of mine. And we actually didn't have a good relationship, but I said, you need to give him the very first thing. So when I said cherry pie, she goes, there's only one gift that she ever gave me that I still have today. And it's this.
Oh, look at that. A baking pan, cherry pie. That's wonderful.
So anyhow, but I think the reason I wanted to try this was just so I better understand what it feels like or how you get the information. And it probably, I know it varies person to person, but in general, for me, it's a subtle thing that's either I get a visual, or a feeling, or just a thought pops in. Sometimes it could be a word or words, but it's so subtle that you could easily dismiss it and not say it. But when you do say it, you find out, wow, that was more meaningful than I thought. I remember I got a few other things in there, like oranges. Why oranges? And then turned out that her dad had an orange stand, by the side of the road where people would drive up and buy oranges. So
sounds like California.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was actually in Phoenix, but nonetheless, same kind of thing.
Phoenix.
Yeah.
Okay. But you, what was it like with your father being a medium psychic? I mean, did he know what you were going to be doing before you did it?
Yeah, it was basically you couldn't get away with stuff because he knew what was going on all the time. My brother, who's 9 years older than me, at the time he was a teenager, I know he had somebody buying him beer when he was underage, and he was drag racing his car, and my dad figured all that out and stopped those things from happening. And one of my favorite stories along those lines involves when my parents were first married. My mom was working on being a vegetarian. She'd gone a couple of months with no meat. And this one particular day, though, she was craving a burger. So she ran out and got a hamburger and came back home. And when Dad returned that evening, the first words out of his mouth were, "So Shirley, did you enjoy your hamburger today?" That's the kind of stuff,
She got busted.
Yeah. But what I would say, though, that really shaped me in a way that was very helpful when my son Brandon passed was I'd seen my dad's demonstrations so many times, and many of them were more focused on the psychic than the mediumship. But the mediumship, spirit communication, would pop in at times, even in secular venues. And I saw him, bring through very specific information, like the name of the person who had passed, the relationship to the person he was talking to, and a lot of detailed information about them. And as a kid, that was my favorite thing. It's like my face lit up. I'm like, wow, there really is more. I don't know how it works, but obviously we must go on after this. And so just that knowledge and that experience helped me so much when my son passed. And it was more,
I bet. Yeah.
As opposed to just having a blind faith, based on just a religious perspective or something like that. I had more something closer to what I call knowledge than belief.
Oh, the afterlife too. That life does go on. Yeah.
Correct.
Now, the church that your father had, is that still practicing church? Did someone else?
It lasted for a while, but he was such a central figure to it that, it shrunk quite a bit after he passed. But it was called the University of Life. And he wanted it to be more of like an educational center than just, a place of worship, but it was both. And he would demonstrate the gifts of the Spirit, but also, he would give sermons and things like that. But he'd always correlate like these New Testament teachings to the actual phenomena that he and some others in the church could provide to demonstrate, life after death, but also that we have a purpose for being here. And it's about soul growth, and it's about us going down this path. And sometimes the path is not easy. It's not smooth, but that's part of it too, because that rounds us out and refines us and maybe makes us more empathetic.
And that's the key, kindness and being empathetic. I think your father was a man ahead of his time, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, he would be better off today than his time. So, but he, you need pioneers to kind of break things through. And I think he did that.
And that's what he was. He was a pioneer. Yeah. He was a pioneer. Wow. Let's talk about your books. And I think reading your father's book sounds fascinating too. I'd like to know about all the different books and the different flavors that they are.
So the first one, as I mentioned, Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go.
Okay, Shift.
That was my memoir that journaled everything that basically happened after my son passed. It chronicles the experiences that my wife and I have had It chronicles 4 of the readings that I had with top mediums, including the 2 that I'd mentioned, and basically, brings all this around and provides a summary of what I think this all means and what it's all about, and my purpose for being. So it's been a book that's helped a lot of folks. I've had people reach out to me, excuse me, and say that that they feel like I saved their life, from my story, and they're being able to deal with the passing of their own child. So when you do something like that, or you have that kind of feedback, what you're doing is important. My newest book is The Persistence of the Soul. And this book, this is a deeper dive. I really, took my experiences from the first book and really dove deep. And it still has the personal narrative and the personal stories, but this one gets into the research supporting the phenomena. It also, I have a chapter that talks about skeptics and the difference between, open-minded skepticism, which I think is healthy, versus the closed-minded cynicism of people that call themselves skeptics, but really are not open to this. They're just materialists. I've got a chapter on, does good mediumship prove survival? I've got a chapter on my interview with 2 psychic mediums. So sometimes mediums will say, I see this, or they're telling me that. So I wanted to know more about that. Well, describe to me what that means when you say they say this, or I feel that. So it really gets into the nuts and bolts of that, because I think a lot of people like me wanted to know, what do you mean by that? What's that experience like for you as the medium to get that information? Do you see outside yourself? Do you see in your mind's eye? Do you literally hear in an auditory way? So that chapter gets into that. I have a chapter on reincarnation, because there's a story that involved me when I was 3 years old of my father it's kind of interesting. I was sitting at the passenger side door of the car, and my dad says, "Hey, Mark, scoot in. I don't want you to fall out." I said, again, I was 3 years old at the time, and I said, well, then I'd fall out and be broken up into a lot of little pieces, but the angels would come and take me, and I wouldn't cry anymore. But then they make me a new body and make me come back down.
And this is a young child.
3 years old. And
oh my gosh.
Then he asked me, have you been here before? And I said, oh, many times. He says, well, how old were you the last time you were here when you died? And I said, 83 years old. And he says, well, did you die in the war? I said, no, I just got old and tired. I was in the war, but I didn't die in the war. He says, did you have any brothers or sisters? I said, 9 of them. So all these rapid fire answers. Obviously, I have no recollection of that today.
3 years old telling him all this.
Yeah. But then that chapter, I just lead off with that story, maybe in more detail than I shared right now. But then I get into the people who have done the research on reincarnation, like Dr. Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia. He founded the Division of Perceptual Studies there, and they continue on today doing research on things like near-death experiences, reincarnation. And as I mentioned earlier, they've done some on the mediumship piece too. I've got another chapter on an experiment I did with my sister before her passing in 2006, where she put a secret message into a sealed envelope, and it remained sealed until after she had passed. And we received messages from some mediums who were trying to relay what she had written in the envelope. I don't want to give away the punchline to that because it's a pretty intriguing chapter.
Okay.
And I have a chapter on how to find a credible medium too. I think that's an important thing. Like, that's the whole reason why I started the certification program, to give people resources that they could trust. And last but not least, in the middle of the book, I have a chapter called Psychic Phenomena and Mediumship in Religion and History. So I know there's some folks who have hangups about these phenomena from a religious perspective, but I really take those on head on. Like my dad felt that it's totally can fit with, the scriptural miracle stories, many of them. And it's not just some bad thing, but these are the gifts of the Spirit. So I look at it from Eastern religious traditions, and also touch on the monotheistic ones, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Mainly Christianity, though, because that's the one that most of the people have hangups from. And it tends to be more just what they've been told by other people or by their pastor, and not so much that they've taken the time to really dive into the scripture and look for, is it good, bad, or is it okay? And what I tend to tell people is, most of the admonitions against mediums and such are in Old Testament books like Deuteronomy and Leviticus, which also say it's okay to own slaves, and you can will them to your children. And if you have a disobedient son, you should take him to a neighboring town to be stoned to death. So, I think people have to use a little common sense too.
Yeah. We're not going to follow that.
Conversely, in the New Testament, there's a lot of stories that involve phenomena very similar to this story of Jesus at the well with a woman he didn't know, which is clearly clairvoyance, sharing information with her. The story of the Transfiguration, where he talks to two people who have died in front of his disciples. So, and then in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it talks about the gifts of the Spirit. And if you read what those are, they almost directly correlate to these various phenomena, discerning spirits, prophecy, and so on. So anyhow.
Well, both those books sound fascinating. They do.
Well, thanks. And then my dad's book, Your Psychic Potential, like I said, I never knew it existed until it was given to me, and then I got it published. But it basically goes through his process. Back in like 1969, he did these workshops for ESP development for people who were interested in that. So really the way this book came together was he had someone sit there and take notes on everything he was teaching. And then these notes became the book. So it was really all of his protocols for people who were interested in developing these abilities.
What's really odd is, for some reason, I am really drawn to that book. The one not all of them, but I don't know why, but for some reason, I just want to pick that one up and read that right away.
Well, it's available.
Well, I saw there, I know. And I'm thinking maybe a signed copy. I can somehow, maybe when you're in the band or something, have the book and bring it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to sign it for you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And is that your father right there? Obviously.
Yeah, that's him.
He's a very nice looking man too.
Thanks. I always like that picture of him, so that's why I chose that particular one.
He looks charismatic.
He was. I would say he was very a very happy person. He loved people. He was very non-judgmental. And
everybody's judging him. What he's doing, everybody's judging him.
Yeah, he would draw people. Like I said, with his church, he had a pretty big congregation there when he was at the helm of it, and it faded pretty quickly after he left.
Right.
But I would say he was a well-loved person, and he loved other people just as well.
Mm-hmm. And he still talks to you and gives you signs too, which is beautiful. Mark, if you could give one piece of advice to people that are searching for a psychic or a medium, let's say, just one piece of advice you could give someone.
Well, first off, you need to find the right person. So you could go to a resource like mine if you don't have anything else to find thecertifiedmedium.com, or just go to my website, markirelandauthor.com, and there's a link to the certified medium site there. Those people have all been vetted. Some performed better than others, but all of them exceeded the requirements.
Oh, I'm going to go play on your website today.
Yeah. And then, you may get references to other people too, from people that you know and trust. I actually refer people to some mediums that are not on my site just because I know them to be tremendously good mediums, and they don't have the time or bandwidth to go through my process. And I don't really need them to.
Because
like Farrah Gibson, who I mentioned, like Gordon Smith in Scotland, who's one of the very best in the world. But he's he doesn't even do individual readings anymore. He's just too busy. He'll do gallery readings and things, and many others. So I would say, first off, find somebody who, either through a source like mine or from a recommendation from someone you know and trust, and then go into it. You don't want to front load the person. You want to get an honest reading where they're telling you, you're not spilling your guts about everything that you want to know and all these details. So be somewhat guarded during the dialogue too, not to be adversarial by any means. Be uplifting, be positive, but just be careful how much you share. Let them tell you. Don't feed them everything.
Right.
So those are my primary pieces of advice. Find somebody who's trustworthy, and then go into it with a positive mindset. I even tell people to make a prayerful request to connect with your people before the session, and then just have a friendly dialogue, but just don't say too much.
Okay. Can you touch upon about the Helping Parents Heal, in case anybody needs to tap into that, please?
So back in, I think, January of 2010, I was doing a workshop in Phoenix, basically sharing my dad's training materials that are in the book that you're interested in. And I was, during a break, a woman approached me named Suzanne Wilson, who, again, is a phenomenal medium. She's not on my site either because, again, she's booked out, and I already knew she was good. But at the time, I didn't know who she was. She stepped up to me and she goes, "Hey, I just moved here from Florida to Arizona. And the reason I came to this event was because I wanted to meet like-minded people." And she said, "It's ironic that your son passed on a mountain, because I just had made contact with another woman who her son had died on a mountain as well, but it was in Tibet. It was the Himalayas." And I said, "Well, why don't you give her a copy of my book, Soul Shift, and here's my contact information. So if she wants to ask me any questions, she can call me." It was like a day or two later, I got a call from Elizabeth Boyson, and she's like, "Hey, Mark, I read your book in one sitting or two sittings. I loved it, and I want to meet you and your wife." So we got together, and she was telling me that she had this Facebook group called Parents United in Loss, but she was about to have her very first in-person meeting, and she'd like me to be the speaker. So I said, okay. So 2 weeks later, I go to this meeting. She's got 30 people in a room, and we had a good meeting. And then she started doing these every month. And so I didn't make them all, but some of them I made. And about in fall of 2011, another medium friend of mine that I met through the course of time, Tina Powers, said, "Hey, Mark, I think your real mission in life is to help other parents who have been through the same thing you've been through. So maybe you could think about starting an organization to do that." So then I thought, well, why reinvent the wheel? Because Elizabeth has a good thing going, but the only thing is she doesn't have a website or a newsletter, and it's only one location. So I called her and said, "Hey, would you be interested in partnering with me? I'll help you put together a website and a newsletter. And then we can blueprint what you do in your meetings, and then see if other people want to lead affiliate chapters in other locations." And that's how it started. She goes, "Oh, I love that." And I said, "How about a new name like Helping Parents Heal?" She goes, "Oh, I love that name. I didn't like the name I had. It was too negative." And so that's how it started. I think we, within the first 6 to 12 months, we had maybe half a dozen locations. But today, it's more than a decade later. We've got about 170 affiliate locations, 31,000 members, and we have a conference every other year that draws 1,100 people. So,
Mark, look what you've done.
It's become a big, big organization that brings a lot of healing to folks. And the reason we exist really is because we're the only organization of our type that allows people to openly discuss their spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence. We don't have any dogma. We're not coming from a position of telling people what to think or not think.
Right.
We make available the opportunity to discuss these things, and also present, people who want to share things, like mediums that will do readings for the folks on Zoom, or, somebody who had a near-death experience tell their story, or sometimes have therapists talk to the people. So I'd say anybody who's had a child pass, who's interested in this as a resource, just go to helpingparentsheal.org.
Okay. because I have someone in mind whose husband or son
Yeah,
committed suicide.
there's a list of locations where we have affiliates, and even if somebody lives in an area where we don't have one, we do Zoom meetings all the time that are available. So,
so are there any in our area?
there is a chapter in Portland. It's run by a woman named Annie Adams and her husband Mark, and they rent out space at the the Unity Spiritual Center. I think it's on Stark in Portland.
That's a little church.
Yes, but so the room, I was at the last meeting on Saturday, and they had, I'd say, about 20 people there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these groups vary in size. Some might be as few as half a dozen people, and like the one in Phoenix, which is the original one, they'll get over 100 at some of these meetings.
Yeah, I was just thinking that might not be large enough, but yeah, that's good. I've been to that church many times.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I think I saw James Van Prague there years ago too. I think that was the church where I saw him. Yeah, long time ago.
He just sent me an email last week because he actually came to our last conference, but he had a local medium here that he was telling me was extremely good, and he wanted me to meet him, named Daniel Monroe. I don't know if you've heard of him.
He's been on my channel.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm talking to, I saw Daniel's gallery reading last week. So I know JVP wanted me to look at him as a resource for helping parents heal.
Well, I saw him and James having an interview too, or they were promoting something on Facebook. They were together. I think Daniel was down with James in his area.
Okay. I think James said that they're going to have some show produced soon with the two of them. I don't really know what it's about or whatever, but I guess we'll see.
It was the first time I saw Daniel without makeup too. That guy's makeup looks better than mine, but yeah, he just had just adopted 2 boys. Did you know that?
Yeah, and I guess one of them got really, really ill, and he was afraid that the child might not make it. So I think he told me that stress that he went through made him, have a much better understanding for empathizing with parents who have had a child pass.
Right.
So I think that's one reason why he's so interested in working with us.
Oh, wow. Whew. I'm getting chills over here. Really. Wow. Oh, Mark, this has been an extremely enlightening interview. Did I get to cover everything that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much more. If people do read the books, I think that'll give them a lot more information. Or if you're not a reader of books, or you don't have time or interest in that, you can go to my media tab on my website, markirelandauthor.com, and you could see the Discovery Channel clip. You could see there's a short documentary that was made a number of years ago by a couple of students at Arizona State University, Cronkite School of Journalism. That's on my story, at least the story through that point in time. And there's a lot of other interviews. I've been on Coast to Coast a few times. I've been on a lot of other podcasts and things. So you can find all that there. And then also the video of my dad on Steve Allen's show, which I think is really a good representation of what he did. You can find that there.
On your website.
There's a link to, all of this there's links on my website, and there's a link to the Certified Medium site on my website, and a link to Helping Parents Heal on my site. So if you just go to markirelandauthor.com, all those resources are there.
I'm going to be checking that out.
Yeah, I would just tell people, my personal conviction is we're here for a reason. It's all about soul growth and service. So,
it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
sorry,
so
I mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, it's okay. People are all going to go through bumps in their life, period of sorrow and tough times. Mm-hmm. But if you could just weather that and go through it, at the end, you'll come out better on the other end, I believe. And it helps. We're all in this together.
We are. And we're all there to support each other. And having people with like-mindedness in the groups is so helpful and so beneficial too.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited about having you. And I think I'll get all of your books, and then you keep me posted on when you're going to perform in your band, and I'll bring the books with me if you don't mind, if that's okay.
No, that's great. That'd be an honor. And
Yeah.
I'll send you a link to the band website.
Did I ask you? Okay, yeah, send me a link. What kind of music do you play?
Pop and rock from the 60s to today. So
awesome.
all eras of pop and rock, pretty much from 60s to now.
Okay. I'm particular to the 80s, 70s and 80s. So
okay. Yeah, we have some 70s and 80s in there for sure. One of the, I don't sing that many songs, but one of them I sing is an 80s tune by Modern English called I Melt With You. I don't know if you know that one.
I'm what with you?
I melt with you.
That's what I heard. No, yeah. But I'm going to go look up I Melt With You.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, when I send you the website, it's we're called blowncoverband.com. You'll see a song list, and it's all by era. So anyhow.
Okay. Well, Mark, you have been a wealth of knowledge and fascinating, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Well, you take care and have a good rest of your day.
I will. Thank you so much. A pleasure. A pure pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.